Just want to welcome everybody to the Worcester School Committee meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. The National Anthem is going to be sung by Angelo Gray, who's a fourth grader at the Nelson Place School. And Angelo, all these people came out for you tonight. Okay. You have a microphone? Okay, we'll do the pledge. Okay. I pledge allegiance. Yep. Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You gonna give me a thumbs up? I can start now? Right now?
Yep.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that a flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Good job, buddy.
Can you do a roll call?
Member Clancy? Here. Vice Chair Johnson?
Here.
Member Kamara?
Here.
Member Mailman?
Here.
Member McCullough?
Here.
Member O'Connell-Novick? Mayor Petty?
Yeah, she said here, yeah. In here. Okay, so we have a number of people here tonight, so we'll start with the public testimony. So you can speak for no more than 2 minutes, and then appearing on the agenda. Just your name and city of residence.
Sure. I am Melissa Verdier. I'm a Worcester resident and the president of the Educational Association of Worcester. I'm going to be sharing a letter that you are now receiving. You will have some people bringing them to you as I read. So, dear Mayor Petty and Worcester School Committee members, we're seeking your support of and advocacy for the Educational Association of
appreciate it,
Worcester,
thank
EAW, 3,100 members in our fight for fair contracts. Many members have been working without a contract since August of 2022. An effective educator is the most important school-based determinant of education outcomes, and it is crucial that Worcester Public Schools compensate, recruit, and retain high-quality educators. WPS has fallen far behind area districts in compensation and benefits. We believe the district and the school committee are not doing all that they can to act in good faith and negotiate our contracts in a timely manner. and this is detrimental to not only our members, but also to our students, parents, and the entire community, all stakeholders in Worcester Public Schools. Facing unprecedented levels of inflation, increasing class sizes, growing workloads, increases in students requiring specialized services, compounded by the historic underpaying of educators, it is essential that WPS provide employees with improved working conditions and compensation commensurate with that of our colleagues in other districts. It is not simply a matter of fairness, but it is necessary to foster future economic stability of workers, their families, and the city of Worcester. Unfortunately, we've been negotiating contracts for well over a year. We're calling on you to take swift action and settle fair contracts for all educators now. We want to hear all our voices, loud and clear. We signed this petition in support of fair contracts for all 3,100 EAW members. We fully and unequivocally support the following statements.
What's your name and say your residence?
Melanie Elzahar, Worcester resident. We've taught at Burncoat High School and I've taught for the city for 22 years. I think it's important that we believe our students deserve and must have educators who are treated with respect and compensated fairly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Haggerty, Worcester resident, graduate of Worcester Public Schools and math teacher at Burncoat High School. We believe our students deserve and must have smaller class sizes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katie Fleming, West Boylston. I'm a special educator at the ACT program in Worcester. We believe our students deserve and must have safe schools and classrooms.
Thank you, Katie.
Lynn Vincent, resident of Auburn.
You can pull that right up to you if you want.
I'm a special ed teacher at Burncoat High. I've been in the system for 21 years. We believe the district is damaging the ability for our schools to attract and retain educators, which severely damages student access to the consistent and quality educational services they deserve.
Thank you.
Rose Murphy, Worcester resident, product and current employee of the Worcester Public Schools. We believe all educators deserve a living wage. Thank you.
Megan Lashmet, resident of Marlborough, teacher at Burncoat High. I've worked for Worcester Public Schools for 12 years. We believe all elementary school teachers deserve a daily prep.
Thank you.
Melinda Martin, resident of Worcester, paraeducator at Norback Elementary School. We believe all educators deserve a yearly raise that combats the cost of living. Nancy Ortiz from Leicester, Mass. And I teach social studies at North High. We will not increase our working hours days without compensation. We have gone above and beyond and worked more hours than before during the last 3 years without adequate support or compensation.
Thank you.
Kirsten Frazier, I'm a resident of Oakham and I teach multilingual students at Sullivan. We will not negatively impact the ability to attract new educators into the district by charging them a 1% tax on their pay toward a city liability fund with no oversight.
My name's Dan Gay. I'm a teacher at the New Citizen Center. I have 3 children at 3 different Worcester Public Schools. We believe all educators deserve to be paid a salary commensurate with the unending dedication, education, hard work, and care for our students. Risks and time away from our families outside of regular hours required to do our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lynn Hackarainen, a resident of Holden. I am the school adjustment counselor at the Academic Center for Transition, which is the only therapeutic day school for Worcester Public Schools in an elementary setting. We're professionals and experts in our field, and we demand to be treated as such.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing our voices to be heard.
Thank you. Okay, just want to thank everybody for coming out, and I think we'll be meeting very shortly again, and we'll get this done. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to the scheduled meeting, the consent agenda. We'll take that on a roll call. Roll call.
Member Clancy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yes.
Member Mailman?
Yes.
Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, we have from here to anywhere, we have the superintendent's report. Madam Superintendent, we have the same group coming up? Oh. What's that? I'm going to go right now. Do you want to introduce it? I'm going to have the Madam Superintendent to a brief opening, and here we go. I'll be right back.
Just going to wait a few seconds, just so we can give people an opportunity to exit out. Okay, I think we can get started. So through the chair, and welcome, Vice Chair Johnson. I want to thank Dr. Morris and Dr. Kyriasis for this presentation tonight, Innovating for the Future. So tonight, committee, you will hear how we would like to start thinking about what the future of education can look like, sound like, and feel like in Worcester Public Schools. And first we have to think about what is required of our youth as they move into the workforce. And so you're going to hear some of what the current state of the future looks like, which is kind of an interesting place to be because none of us have a crystal ball. But what we do know is there are changes happening, most specifically through technological advances, and we need to be prepared for that. We need to be supporting our educators on how do you start moving in that direction so that our youth are ready to be those adults that we need them to be and able to access careers that will really support them to have a family and really thrive in society. So as you hear some things this evening, I do ask you to really lean into these new ideas. They are different. They're not what any of us who are sitting here are used to. And also, none of this do we plan on doing tomorrow. None of this do we even plan on doing next month. We're going to start working with people to do this, right? Because this work is not something you do to people, you do it with them. And it'll make more sense as you hear some of this. So tonight, most specifically, you're going to hear about the new technologies that are impacting our society and what that means for the future of the workforce and implications for education in Worcester Public Schools. We're going to talk about implications in terms of the teaching and learning, and then at the end, we're going to start just posing to you some potential implications around policy and fiscal. And we're going to start doing this at every committee or report to the superintendent to help frame, like, you need enough information to then be able to know what might be some policy implications to whatever we're sharing or what might be some fiscal. So that's going to be a new piece we're adding. So Dr. Morris and I were able to attend a conference, a national conference. It's been 2 weeks now, where we listened to what's going on nationally in terms of this moving to an innovative educational system that is really preparing children for the future. And this visual that we have right here really speaks to where we are as a district and how you manage this tension between caring for where we are in the present, right? So just as I said, this isn't something we're going to jump right into. To be prepared for future innovation, which you'll hear us speak to, it's the AI work, right? Artificial intelligence. None of us, I'm not going to say none of us. Myself as the superintendent, this is very new to me, right? What exactly does this look like in practice? What does this mean for education? How is this shifting what we've been doing in education over the last few decades? And we need to care for the educators now, support them, guide them, develop them, care for the youth now as we enable the future, right? And so balancing all of that, because it's not one or the other. It needs to be done with an and statement. So keep that in mind too, right? This is going to be a lot of information and a lot of change, and we have to be very cognizant of caring for now as we look to the future. Next slide. So before we jump into that, and I turn it over to Dr. Morris, I have promised you that I'm going to, every time we do a report of the superintendent, now I want to link it to the superintendent goals. So you're going to see this slide over and over again. So tonight specifically, the goal that we're working on or working towards links directly to the district goal around collaborating and building out these handbooks or guidebooks or frameworks, depending on which topic we're talking about. Tonight specifically, we're talking about the portrait of a graduate, which we're going to rename, but I'm going to let the ladies share that, and how this idea around innovation folds into what we want for our future learners, and then what do we need to do to support our staff in getting there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Morris. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. So as Dr. Menard mentioned, this evening we're going to be talking about some emerging technologies and how this exponential growth of these technologies, in specific artificial intelligence, also called AI, are challenging everything we know about our current workplace and how these changes are now causing changes in our current models for education. So we're going to be learning a little bit more about this. So next slide, please. So innovation in society. So innovation in society has been around for a long time, and innovation has always impacted change. So in this circle, in this cycle, you see an innovation occurs, and as this innovation occurs, changes in the workforce happen. And as a result of that, we need to then have our changes occur in educational institutions and schools. And as our school systems change, that is an impact on our students, and hopefully with these impacts and changes in our educational institutions, we provide opportunities for our students to enter the workforce ready for work. So innovation has always been a part of American history and education. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about history of education in the U.S. So the historical purpose of education in the U.S. was essentially to improve society, which was continued in America with the arrival of the European settlers. And in the newly formed U.S., literacy was decided essential for a democracy to work and the country to grow, so education focused more on rote memorization, reciting things, and understanding whole group instruction. During the industrial age, which is the mid-18th century to the mid-20th century, these changes led to an emphasis on practical over theoretical learning, and primitive technologies like the chalkboard and pencils and photo slides began to emerge and change how we learn. So the information age, which we currently have learned a lot about, began in the middle of the 20th century, actually, and is characterized by a shift from these traditional industries to informational technology. And some ideas around informational technology shifts are data storage, personal computing, and digital media. Our students now have access to multiple types of digital devices and experiences on a daily basis for both personal and educational use. And then you'll see the last circle is a question mark, because where are we headed? Advancements in technology are so rapid, so fast, we're not quite sure. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So we will then, the next slide is a quote that I thought we should sit with for a bit and think about. In the past, education was a pathway to get ready for a career or a job. Today, from Google, Future of Education, which was published in the fall of 2022, this innovative idea popped out at us. The idea that you educate for jobs is an idea of the past. Today, you learn to create your future and learn to create your job. So, as Dr. Marnaris said, these are some very innovative ideas. We'd like you to lean in with us. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Kiriasis.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the transition from IT or information technology to artificial intelligence or AI. A little over 30 years ago, the World Wide Web started to infiltrate society, colleges, and K-12. And it was a novelty to most people. I was doing some research and I found some old video clips of people saying, "What's the internet? What would we do with that? Why would I want to go shopping online?" And now it's a part of our everyday life. And the time it took for the internet to kind of infiltrate was, probably like a decade or so. And what we're going to talk about here is we're at the very beginning of AI, a little bit past what it was 30 years ago with IT, but it's not going to take us a decade. It's going to take us a very short amount of time. We really don't even know. When we put together this presentation last Tuesday, and some things have already come up. Every day there's new things coming up with AI and how it's impacting us. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. I tried to put this in the most simplest of terms for everyone, and I also am learning along with everyone else. So I wanted to start with this graphic that I found from Pew Research Center 7 years ago. So this was in 2022. 7 years before that, only 73% of teenagers in the US had smartphones. Today, in 2023, 95% of teenagers have this, I didn't bring my phone up, a powerful computer in their hands. When I went to college, I bought an alarm clock. I didn't have a computer because it was in the 90s, but I brought a dictionary I got for my graduation. I brought a flashlight, a map to get there, all these things. Our children have these in their hands all the time. Their communication devices, their, all of these things that are in their hands. It's so seamless, we don't even realize what's there. And there's AI in their hands already. So when we, say, "Hey Siri, what's the weather?" it's talking to us. When we go into Google Photos and look for, if I'm looking for my 15-year-old son when he was 2, it's facial recognition. So we talk to our bank's chat apps. We have AI already. So why are we here today talking about AI if it's already in our lives? Well, there's been a new development in the last 3 months, and it's called ChatGPT. There's articles every single day coming out. So I'm going to explain to you why this is different than what is already in our students' hands. So bear with me here. So I want to explain artificial intelligence. Basically, it's a database. So these types of databases that we have now that are in the news are large language formats. And so they're language-based. They don't search the internet. It's a database created where information is put in. parameters are set, goals, weights, and algorithms. Human beings are, this is where bias comes in. Human beings are putting this information into the database. They're deciding what the weights are, what goes in. The computer program is taught to recognize patterns, and it interprets and predicts and acts on those patterns, and it outputs a response. And we as humans calibrate those responses. We give feedback. So when you're on your phone and you misspell a word, it will give you feedback. Well, that was a word I really want to, I want to say that because that's my daughter's name. You don't know it yet. So then the phone learns, okay, that's the name. Like, we're going to use this, and they add it to their database. So this is constantly happening. And what's so interesting about these large language models that are coming out now is that they mimic human intelligence so carefully that it's really hard to tell. But they are machines, and we are interacting with them as humans. The humans are the drivers behind this. And I want people to really take notice that the humans are really behind this, because teachers are still really important. Human beings are still really important. So ChatGPT or GPT are generative pre-trained transformers. So what that means is every answer that it gives is different. It's pulling from its experience or what's been programmed, and it's giving different answers. It's not searching the internet. So in November of 2022, 3 months ago, ChatGPT came out, and it was actually the 3.5 edition of it. And very soon to come is GPT-4. They're saying first quarter, but we're almost end of first quarter, but it's coming soon. And it's not just ChatGPT that's coming out. There's Google Sparrow, there's Google Bard, and many, many others. There's billions of dollars being poured into these large language models. So why are we talking about it? Disruption. ChatGPT has already passed the medical boards, the bar exam, the Wharton MBA exam, CPA, and the list goes on and on. So GPT-3 was based off 175 billion pieces of information. And why the workforce in education is so worried about this next rendition is because it's between 10 to 100 trillion pieces of information. We don't know quite how many yet. And it's also very, very popular. So Netflix took 41 months to reach 1 million users, Facebook 10 months, ChatGPT took 5 days to reach 1 million users. And if you've ever tried to use it, you know it's a little slow. So I've talked a lot, so I'm gonna take you through a ChatGPT conversation that I had here. So what I have asked it is to write a lesson plan for a grade 6 science standard. I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's 5 minutes. I'm going to stop at certain intervals and walk you through what it's doing. Okay. So here we go. I wrote make and then I changed it to write because it's very important what you put in for a prompt. And it's pulling, it looks like it's thinking, it looks like someone's talking to you on the other end, but it's actually the program pulling from all of the information it has, saying like, I've seen lesson plans. Let me pull together all the best information. And it's giving the grade level, it's rewriting the standard, it's giving objectives, it's giving the materials you should use. It gives exactly how your lesson plan should go. It should be 10 minutes, introduction, and it goes on and on. And I'm just gonna let it play for a second. So it gives you a full lesson plan. Then I say, include differentiation for students with disabilities and multilingual learners. And it does. It starts to provide visuals such as diagrams. It separates them out, students with disabilities, and then another one for multilingual learners. I'm going to skip ahead. I can provide the video after. And I'm going to say, create a hands-on assessment that students can do collaboratively. And then it gives me a hands-on assessment. Let's skip ahead there. It's, telling how to do this hands-on assessment. I should have said with technology. And then at about, then I talk to it. at about 3:18, and I say create a rubric for this activity, for the assessment. So it starts to make a rubric. It starts to do the table criteria, gives me the points. I want to leave this in because this is the computer thinking. You can see the code here, right? So this is the program. And then it kind of like glitches out a little bit, and it gives me the rubric without a table. And about when it's done with that, I say to it, or I type in and say, can you put this in a table format? And then it gives me the table. So it's pretty fascinating. So you can see how this can really help teachers as well. Just start with their baseline lesson plans. So I'm going to turn it back over to, am I doing the next part? I think I am. Yep, I'm doing the next part. Okay, so what are implications for this? So this is from the same Google Future of Education. It was a 3-part report, and they did research globally. And this quote says, by 2025, 97 million new jobs will be created, and 85 million existing roles may disappear. Everyday tasks currently performed across all sectors will likely be automated. There's another quote in the same report that says students need to be able to not only change jobs, but change fields, have the skill sets that can change fields. So what are some of these skills that we're predicting that students will need? So between 2019 and 2020, this organization, DurableSkills.org, did a search of 2.9 million job postings in Massachusetts, and 66% of those job postings had one or more of these durable skills, what we used to call soft skills. I like the word durable more. Durable skills in their job descriptions, and over half had the word communication. And then the Future of Jobs report, which is global, says the top 5 in-demand skills are here. And as you can see, creativity keeps inching up the chart every 5 years. But these are all those durable skills: active learning, critical thinking, communication, collaboration. And then about a month ago, before I knew I was going to do this presentation, I asked ChatGPT, what will the top 10 skills be in 2035? Because 2035 is the year our current kindergartners are going to graduate. And of course, it told me artificial intelligence, machine learning is number 1. Of course it did. But as you can see in there, besides all the technology things, complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, innovation, emotional intelligence, all the same things that we're hearing about. So I'm turning it over to Dr. Morse to take us home with where we're going.
So here it is. It's a sneak peek of our vision of a learner. So you saw the durable skills on slide 19. You saw what kindergarten students graduating 2035 will need to do and know and be competent in. So we decided we need to start building that now. So there'll be more to come soon on a full presentation, but our team has been very hard at work developing, refining, and building on the portrait of a graduate work that was in place last year. So what you see here are 5 overarching characteristics of future-oriented learners: problem-solving, curious learner, empowered individual, effective communicator, and engaged citizen. These pieces will also be powerful and important as we build out our new instructional framework. We've been building upon this previous version of Portrait of a Graduate because there was a lot of great work done last year. There was a lot of input from many stakeholders, and we believe that we could take some of that work and then build it to be an even better vision for the Worcester Public Schools. So you'll see a shift from people knowing a lot of things and moving toward people having the skills to apply the knowledge, to use this powerful knowledge. Literacy and other core subjects will always be important: math, science. But what good is a lot of knowledge without the skills to use this information in productive and creative ways? So this is our sneak peek of the very beginning of our vision of a learner. So this will be a framework for how we approach our future work, and this will be available shortly in the spring. So this next slide, you see 3 circles: instruction, assessment, skills and knowledge, learning space, and tools. We believe these are 3 big buckets of areas and key aspects of what future-ready schools are going to be required to prioritize and focus on. Shifts and adjustments to how we teach, how we assess, and learn are ahead for us. Learning spaces, as you know, will play a major role in future schools, as well as an awareness that the tools we use and learn can powerfully augment the learning process. As Dr. Kariasis says, teachers will always be critical in the first and most important component of a high-quality education. However, as we adjust and adapt, we'll be able to use new tools that will help teachers provide even more information and have our students have more access to ideas than ever before. In order for our students to be successful in the future, they also have to learn how to verify the truth, be ethical and responsible digital citizens, and our schools and policies, and this is why we bring this to all of you, must assist students to learn how to use all this powerful information with integrity and for the common good. So our next slide is all about fiscal and policy implications. As we think about the future, we think about our kindergartners in the year 2035, we have to start thinking now about, do our course offerings and the opportunities we provide for our students support their opportunities to be successful in that not so far away future, but far away enough that we're not sure what it's going to look like. Are our CTE and CVTE certifications, are they lined up with what the new jobs are going to be? Are we able to forecast and predict the areas that we need to focus and prepare our students for their future learning and their future welfare? Professional development, it's a big deal. How are we going to help our educators be prepared to deliver this innovative, high-quality instruction that's future-oriented? That will be another area of work that we will have to decide and work on. And like Dr. Manara said, not today, not tomorrow, but we have to decide now. Pathway revisions. Do our current pathways for graduation make sense? Will they make sense in 2035? Do students have to sit in classrooms to collect credits? Will we be able to recreate pathways for high school graduation in different ways with outside work experiences? Digital tools. I can't even imagine what kind of tools will be available in the year 2035. I think about all the tools we have in front of us today, and we take it for granted. I can't imagine how much technology we will further augment our learning in our personal lives in the future. Personnel, will teachers, principals still work the same way? Instructional assistants, will we need different ways, different jobs, different careers in education to help further and enhance the future schools that we envision and we imagine? So these are policy and fiscal implications that we'll begin to have some conversations about as we move forward. So then I'm going to bring you to the next slide, and you just saw this. So care for the present, enable the future. And you see this person on a tightrope holding a pole, and they look like they're trying to balance. So when we think about care for the present, we did a lot of work over the past several years caring for the present. We got through COVID, a pandemic, and we had to care for the present. We did all we could to ensure that our students were safe and that their well-being was a priority. Sometimes when we're so busy caring for the present, we can't enable what the future will be. And if we don't start thinking about where we need to go, we'll be behind before we get started. So I'm going to use an analogy from Wayne Gretzky. He was a NFL, oh geez. He played in the National Hockey League. So he was one of the best hockey players that ever played the game. And somebody said to him, why were you so good? And he said, because I didn't go where the puck was. I always went where I thought the puck was going to be. So for us, I'd like to believe that we could learn a lot from Wayne Gretzky and start thinking about how do we position this district so that we start to imagine where the puck is going to be so that we're ready and we provide our scholars in the Worcester Public Schools the very best opportunity that we can. How we do this is really, it's a lot of work. So caring for the present, we'll never stop caring for the present. But how do we care for the present and move and shift at the same time to enabling the future? And so in order to do that, we need to provide our leaders training, resources in order to implement this new version of a vision of a learner. We have to refine and adjust our current instructional framework to move from content only to skills with content, so our students, our scholars, have the opportunity to learn how to be productive and take the new skills that they learn and apply the new learning and knowledge that they have to be successful. And we have to reconfigure and tip upside down, in a way, classroom instruction. We have to ensure that we're building academic skills, but also interpersonal skills and leadership skills, so that we're enabling our students to be as prepared as we can imagine for the year 2035. So I will leave you with what ChatGPT said. And ChatGPT said, the future of AI is not about replacing humans, but augmenting them to achieve things beyond our wildest dreams. So where will our world be in 2035? I don't know. But what I do know is we want our students to be ready for the responsibility, the leadership, and the stewardship of our society when it's their time. And what I can guarantee you all is that change is coming. So we have some references that we added just in case you were interested in learning more about innovative technologies that are pressing upon the educational models and systems today. So thank you.
All right.
Just going to close up real quick, and then you can do, yes. Yes, so I want to thank the team. You can imagine, school committee, this is very exciting, and it's also, it's scary, right? As educators, we like to think that we know what to do, and in this case, we have to lean into being lead learners and transforming our district to be one of learning. And we're always learning, and that means we're going to make mistakes, and this will not always work every single time, and supporting each other when things don't go well and learning from that, right? So as we become that learning organization that we are meant to be, that's what education is, and being okay with not having all the answers, then that's where it requires us to support each other even further, to see each other as humans that make mistakes and be okay with that and grow, because in the end of the day, it meets the needs of our scholars. And we need them to be the best prepared for what their future will hold. So I have no idea what, I think I heard Sarah say ChatGPT is a language disruptor. Is that what you said? I don't know. Yes?
It's a large language model, it's called.
Language model,
yeah. But it's a generative transform, like the GPT stands for generative pre-trained transformer. So it's pre-trained before it's put out, and then it generates different answers.
Yeah, my whole brains just went, but that's okay, right? That's okay. Because what I do know is our scholars will get this probably faster than many of us, and that's okay. And that we will support our educators so that they feel comfortable moving in this direction. We're not going to throw this at them. So, and then finally, I will say, and then I'll turn it over to you, Vice Chair Johnson, that we won't do this alone either. So we were able to find a partnership that we're in conversation with right now, and this is a national partnership where they bring other districts together that are also doing this future learning work, so we don't have to start on our own. Some of them include, I think, Seattle Public Schools, and there was another large one. Was it Chicago? No, Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade was another one. And then smaller ones, right? So just as we ask our classroom educators and our principals for the collective efficacy and working with each other, we need to also continue to model that and learn from other districts and learn with and from them. And so this is part of the journey that we look forward to being a part of. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both. Member McAuliffe.
Thank you, and through the chair, I don't know, it's just so exciting, and I think to the superintendent point, a little scary too, right? You know, when I read this report this week, in preparation for tonight's meeting, I was eager to hear the actual presentation, because it's something I think about for, you know, my own self, my children, and how it's now going to impact the schools. So it is exciting to hear about it. And, you know, I really appreciated that you talked about how we balance, right, the caring for the present and preparing for the future. I also really like the shift of vision of a learner from the portrait of a graduate. I really think that encompasses more what our goal is, right? We're really trying to make our students and scholars learners, right? And that makes them lifelong learners. And how do we do that with knowing these advancements in technology that are coming? Again, I can't say enough about the presentations that we've been getting and the information that we've been getting, and the candor of things that might not be going well as well, because that's what we need to hear, right? We've talked about that. I know Member Mailman talks about that often as well, right? We want to hear the good and the bad, because how do we make things better, and how do we move forward, and how do we as a school committee support that? So just, you know, the importance of teaching how to use this technology responsibly and ethically, providing our educators with the tools, right? I mean, in the superintendent, when you just recapped you, I already had that in my notes, but that's going to be so important because this is going to be looking at things completely differently than what we currently do, and looking at learning outside the box and creating a map of what is needed moving forward and really anticipating what the future may hold. So I really do appreciate the work that's being done on this to set us up to be proactive and not reactive, because I think there is so much that's unknown, right? We see, you know, as you mentioned, the internet, right? I mean, when I was going off to college, that was barely, you know, we weren't barely using that. Like, I still had encyclopedias at home that I was relying on to do research. Now, our kids can put anything in the internet and find information in seconds. And just seeing your example of how a whole lesson plan can be created and how it can be used in such positive ways. So I'm excited to see where we go with this, and excited that we're already starting to work on it and being forward thinking. So I really do appreciate that. And the only question I was going to ask was what GPT stood for, so you already answered that. And just really thank you so much. It's exciting to hear, and I'm just excited that we're really preparing our school system for the future and our students for the future and where this may lead. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go with Member O'Connell-Novick.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Likewise, I appreciate not only the presentation it being, as was noted, as upfront as it was, but also the connection back to the work that's actually ours, and also the evaluation of the superintendent, which we know that we need to always keep in focus. I guess I wanted to raise 2 points. The first is that what I didn't hear was whether or not the lesson plan was right. And I raised that because I have been keeping an eye on this, not obviously as close an eye as our administration has. But for example, the recent article in Gizmodo said, chatbot GPTs at time wacko answers are what Google engineers and others in the field have referred to cautiously as AI hallucinations. They create answers that seem convincing but are partially or completely made up, which isn't exactly a great sign for anyone looking to authoritative AIs in high-stakes fields like medicine or law. It's, as one expert put it, it's often a kind of BS artist missing truth, error, fabrication in a way that can sound convincing unless you have some expertise yourself. And I just offer that because it's actually something I've seen in several different contexts, which is that the answer can sound correct, it can look right, but it can actually be wrong, because of course we know that it's drawing on this wide array of information. Also, interestingly, apparently it doesn't do arithmetic particularly well, which is interesting. So I didn't hear that. I want to offer it because that's something that I think needs to be part of this conversation, which is that this sort of like, we're going to turn, you know, there is a draft that can be turned over. You can't have it do something that you don't already know yourself, because if you actually want it to be correct, you actually need to go actually make sure that it's right. The second thing, and we got there eventually, but I wanted to just sort of ground ourselves in it, is that the sort of cycle of innovation, and I appreciate the way that Dr. Morris put this in terms of innovation sort of always leading to back to the classroom. My favorite example of this is, you know, we always have, whatever the latest technology is always considered a threat by some of the powers that be. You know, now it's smartphones. You can actually find schoolmasters that objected to the ballpoint pen. They were sure that it was going to cause the downfall of civilization, that we weren't going to be using the fountain pen anymore. And no, I'm not making that up. So I offer that in sort of a particular kind of historical context. I do want to note, though, that in terms of grounding ourselves in what our job here is, and this was eventually mentioned, constitutionally speaking, our job as a public school system is to actually create the next generation to be ready to continue to have a democratic system in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's right in Section 2, Chapter 5. So I just want to make sure that when we do this, I understand we're going to talk about the workforce. Yes, I want our children certainly to be prepared to go out and support their families, but ultimately our job is actually even bigger than that. It's actually to make sure that they can participate as adult citizens, as adult residents, as adult denizens in this society. And that is, I would argue, a more important and a bigger and a larger job than simply being workforce ready. I want to make sure that we never constrain ourselves only to that, and make sure that we're always looking for that sort of larger constitutional mandate. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone want to respond to that? Okay.
Through the chair. Thank you, Member Novick. I'm going to let Dr. Kyriasis respond to the lesson plan, but hold on that. I want some further clarity on your second point, just to make sure that I'm tracking. So appreciate that our job, and that this is in state law, that it's about really preparing the youth to be productive, active citizens or residents in the democratic process. Are you asking us to remember that as we craft this, the vision of a learner, that doesn't get lost in it, that truly is kind of wraps around all of it?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that, and also, frankly, in general, as we're thinking of even what our job is. I mean, I always think that as school committee members, we have a particular responsibility. We actually take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and Massachusetts was the first constitution to actually have public education in its actual original document in 1780. So, we actually take an oath that is straight to why do you actually have public education? But I do think that as we think about what is it that we're doing moving forward, I mean, certainly there's been lots of coverage in the press that, American democracy is under one of its periodic sort of shakier times, and that making sure that we actually are preparing the next generation, whatever their legal status, to be able to participate, to defend, to uphold, the rights of everyone, to make sure that we're continuing to have clean water and clean air and everything else, I think is very much a centerpiece of what we need to be doing. So not only that our students are ready to go out and support themselves and their families, but also that they can, whether they run for office or elect people or show up at our public meetings and advocate, whatever it is that they do, that they are prepared to do so in a way that is thoughtful and responsible. I mean, John Adams' vision for public education was for people to read, to write, and to think. And I always think that he ended with to think on purpose, because that's actually part of this too. So I think that's really where I'm going with it.
Thank you. But let's have Dr. Kyriasis speak to the thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your question through the chair. So it's interesting because we ran a few different lesson plans through it. I did a computer science one, and then we did a couple other ones. So we decided to do the 6th grade science standards, and it's a great question because I actually didn't verify to see if it was telling us the truth, because I wanted to kind of bring it and see what kind of questions people would ask. Or I don't know if you were able to see the video or if you could pick out if things were wrong or not, because that's a very important skill that our teachers need and our students need is this right or is this not right? So if I was going to verify it, I would want to go to a 6th grade teacher and have them look through it. And I think that's a really important point that you make, because we want to, I was kind of just showing it to show what it could do, but I wasn't going through to verify the information. But if I were to use it, the skills I would need are verifying the facts, checking I did look a little bit at the L accommodations and the SPED accommodations. So looking at those things, looking at the rubric. So it really does take a skill set and a knowledge base to be able to verify this information and then interact with the chat to make sure that it is, what you can use. So thank you for your question, and I'm glad you asked it because it also leads into the ethics and bias and things like that that can produce, and I think that's, to your point, really important to also, educating and keeping the democracy is all of those types of things, all those skills they need, students need as well. So we need to keep those in mind as we, as teachers use these tools.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually through the chair. That was really actually exactly what I was thinking, which is that this is this then zeroes in on one of the skills that we need to make sure that we're actually teaching the students that we have. Yes, thank you.
All set? Member Kamara?
Thank you to the chair. I just want to say thank you guys ladies, for this presentation. It's very impressive. The fact that we are thinking in education that far now, I think that is very impressive. There's some of the things I'm really impressed by, and I think some of it ties into Member Novik's question or suggestions as well. I am particularly interested in technology and all of this engineering, everything. And you mentioned a lot of things that we're really interested in. One, the fact that we're reaching out to national partners to help us do this work. Right here in Worcester, we have an institution where people are doing this work, WPI. I know professors who are doing this work for other districts. So I would like for us to connect ourselves with WPI and see how they can also be in that partnership level at the local and see where that takes us. I know they're eager to be in that partnership with us. I know Clark University also has a department there too that they're exploring learning options by gaming. So those are two things. And when we talked about our offerings, I'm glad that we're talking about our offerings and how it would need to change. And I would love to even be a part of seeing how this would change to include our honors, our AP, our Chapter 74 programs that we already have, and how all of these pieces are interwoven to be able to educate our students. Another thing that I'm interested in is the receiver and builder model. The receiver model, one for the teacher, the teaching aspect of it is where teachers as a receiver, right, they're getting that information and they have to think about it and they have to deploy it in a way how best that they've been taught by their academia, right? I'm glad that we're doing that. There's a lot of policy implication that will come out of that, which will have to come out of school committee as well in terms of when you guys are doing this, policy implication, we have to mirror that. And I'm also interested in at the builder level because as the teachers are gaining experience and doing this in the classroom, I'm equally eager for the builder model. And that builder model is more looking at the courses and how we are training our kids to be able to do these things. And when the conversation about the workforce, I'm glad that we're talking about workforce because I don't think we get that here all the time. So my perspective of it was a little bit different than holistically we're training our district or our kids for that. I'm thinking that this is a part of the series of presentations we've been getting, which is a component of it. So I'm glad to see that, but I also understand that we need to, in terms of how we figure that out, needs to be taught out in a creative manner. I'm also very interested in this for the learning aspect because this is going to equalize, it's going to really even the playing field for students who are with disabilities to where we're using technology to educate them, and also students who are ESL, right? How do we educate these students? ESL, it's going to, if we use this correctly, on both parts, on both sides, receiver model or builder model, this is going to even out the playing field in how kids retain, how they learn, and how they execute all of these things. So I'm fascinated about this. Like, I'm so excited about this. This just gets me going. The policy implication of it gets me going. Of course, as you guys are developing this, it's a back and forth model. So, but again, in technology and how we do everything, there's places where we have to look at the negativities and how we can ensure that our kids are getting quality curriculum and our teachers are not, utilizing the system in a diseffective way where they're not learning themselves or growing themselves. So it's a two-way field, and I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Mailman?
That was awesome, Gemma. And it's great to have
someone your age views represented at this table. I just had 2 comments to make, and actually it's a little bit tagged on to what you talked about. I am really happy that we are looking at people outside Massachusetts, we are looking at other colleges, other institutions, and that we're already engaged with some of that stuff. And the only other quick comment I wanted to make is, Sarah, how many years ago we were doing a strategic plan together, and Sarah and I were on technology, and we were meeting with, business owners and people in the city and trying to raise money for our iPads, and then the virus hit and we got them, and now God knows what those people would have to say now. So it's wild. What a wild ride we're all on. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Member Clancy?
Thank you. So through the chair, of course, I'm excited about this. I've said this, the durable skills that our students have been lacking in that. I see it across the city for a very long time, and it's huge, and it has huge implications on their jobs, and their careers moving forward. I just get a little nervous because sometimes I feel that our hands are tied by a bigger department that oversees everything that we do. And this is a department that still holds students' diplomas back if they don't pass 3 parts of a test. And I'm talking about the Department of Ed. Do we know where they are? Because when we're talking about like credits, and they're so big on seat time and things like that, and credit bearing, especially for our high school students, like where are they? If we're looking at like course offerings and everything, are we ahead of them, and do we need to do anything to push them forward to make sure that we can provide this for our students? So that's just a couple of questions that I have. And if there's anything that we need to do to get them moving forward, let us know, because it's definitely something important for our students.
Thank you. Who's gonna, Dr. Morse?
Through the chair. So the Department of Education is who you're referring to,
Yes.
correct? Well, I think this technology has hit everybody. And so this isn't going to be us alone. This will be us in context with other schools, other school systems. And I do believe that conversations I've had with the state have been that there is work being done around rethinking how we can organize for improvement and provide other pathways, other options. But you are correct. Then to Dr. Menarez's point, it's not going to happen tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen by the end of this year. It's considered future work, future conversations, but worth having.
Thank you. And hopefully there'll be new leadership in that department, so things will be moving.
All right, thank you. Thank you both for that. Really appreciate it. Another great, solid presentation, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so we will go on to reports of the standing committees. Member O'Connell-Novick, Finance and Operations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance and Operations Standing Committee met on February 13th, 2023, both online in a room 410 of the Durkin Administration Building. The meeting was called to order at 5:30. There were present myself and Member Mailman, with Member Kamara joining the meeting at 5:53. We also had Mr. Allen, Mr. Hennessy, Mr. Freeman, Ms. Consalvo available. The first item that we considered was the petition from students at Forest Grove regarding plastic waste products. Ms. Lombardi presented information that due to contractual terms from a recycling company, there would only be the ability to recycle plastic water bottles at the school. And the administration was willing to set up a pilot program. We requested that the students email Ms. Lombardi if they wish to pursue the implementation of such a pilot program. And then on a voice vote, the motion to file the item was approved. GB 2-249.2, which was to collaborate with state and national school organizations to advocate for a change in federal Department of Transportation policies, barring commercial driver's license testing in any language other than English. Mr. Freeman, who also is president of the Massachusetts Association of People Transportation, in addition to being our assistant director of transportation, stated at the March Board of Directors meeting they would be voting to send a letter in support, or he would be advocating for them to vote to send a letter in support of a waiver that provides the commercial driver's license testing to be available in language other than English to the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles, who were given to understand would be the entity that would need to request such a waiver then from the federal government. My motion was to send a letter from the Worcester School Committee, also in support of such a waiver, to the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles, as well as request MASC Division 9, for my colleagues who aren't aware, that's the urban division, to also request their advocacy in support of such a waiver. On a voice vote, both of those motions were approved. GB 2-241.8, which is to consider monthly updates on the implementation of district operated transportation. We had at that point, via Mr. Allen, hired 7 new drivers, 8 new drivers retire, resign, and for the first time in 2 years, there are 2 after-school buses running for athletics. As my colleagues are aware, we are still recruiting and still training in order for that to be rather fully up and running in time for the spring season. All of the full-size buses are now owned and operated by the Worcester Public Schools. We did have a bit of a setback in terms of the mid-size and wheelchair buses. Those are now not going to be available until the end of the calendar year. The fueling station will be available shortly, and we are putting out a new bid for alternative layouts on the 7D vehicles, as though those may be available sooner. On a voice vote, the motion to hold was approved. GB 1-44.6, to request administration propose for committee consideration of priority list of facility projects to improve health safety of school buildings using ESSER funding. As my colleagues might recall, this is the $2.28 million in HVAC and hot water funding. The report effectively is that there's going to be ESSER projects in virtually all of Worcester Public School buildings. There was a significant rundown in terms of what that would look like in terms of HVAC of several different kinds, as well as water filling stations. I do just want to pull out for my colleagues one point of information from the report that I want to make sure everybody is well aware of. In the review of our HVAC systems, Honeywell found that there was $200 million worth of work needed. Keep in mind, we're putting about 20 million or so into it. So while $20 million is a lot of money, there's still going to be a significant amount that isn't going to be done. We are going to be taking these ESSER updates as part of our larger quarterly facilities reports. So we did make a motion to file this particular item. GB 2-23.4, to consider a pilot provision of menstrual supplies at all secondary schools. Mr. Allen spoke to the purchase and installation of dispensers in or near all bathrooms at secondary schools, and also administration will be working with elementary schools, because obviously this is also something that will be needed in the upper elementary grades. Vice Chair Kamara requested photos at the next time that we bring this up, and we have on the motion to hold, that was approved in a voice vote. GB 2-92.11, request administration provide quarterly updates regarding building maintenance to include timeframes on when work will begin and be concluded. As per usual, we did have an extensive report on this that also included photos, went through all of our buildings, talked about project timelines and matching funding sources, and so forth. On a voice vote, the motion to hold was approved. GB 2-165.1, request the administration provide a report explaining how solar panels benefit the Worcester Public Schools. Ms. Consalvo gave us a rundown of how the solar panels work in terms of both the timeline and in terms of the dollar amounts that are associated with them. On a voice vote, the motion to file was approved. And then finally, on the quarterly budget report, GB 2-239.5, 39.5, to review the status of the FY23 budget and make appropriate transfers. Ms. Consalvo gave us an update highlighting the impacted budget accounts and introduced the transfers. I do just want to flag 2 things for my colleagues, which have not only implications for this report, but also may have implications going forward. The first is that we do continue to have open positions in many areas. And as appropriate, those are being filled by overtime. So part of what you will see here is transfers that actually are moving money from salary accounts into overtime accounts. My colleagues will be familiar, we've done this in the past, but that is as a result of these open positions. The second thing is that utility costs continue to be an issue. As Ms. Consalvo noted in her report, the current supply rate for natural gas increased 30%, and the current supply rate for electricity is up 70% from budget. So these are cost increases that we're continuing to see, and while it's been a relatively mild winter, they are having a budgetary impact, and they could well continue to have a budgetary impact moving forward. So the two transfers that we'll be requesting, and Mr. Chair, that we'll need to vote this evening, please, is transferring $500,000 from custodial salaries into building utilities and transferring $500,000 from transportation salaries into custodial overtime salaries. Those on a roll call of 3-0 were voted at the subcommittee level, and a voice vote, the motion to hold the item was approved, and then the motion to adjourn was approved. So that concludes my report, Mr. Chair, and if we could simply voice vote, we could also voice vote the transfers, that would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take a roll call on the transfers.
Member Clancy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yes.
Member Mailman?
Yes.
Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes.
And before we go on to the other one, let's go back to the report of the superintendent. The rookie, myself, missed that. We didn't file that away. So can we go back and roll call to file the report of the superintendent? Thank you.
Member Clancy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yes.
Member Mailman?
Yes.
Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, point of order. You probably also want to vote to accept the the report of finance and operations.
Can we do them together?
I don't know. Did you say that? I didn't hear it if you did. Thank you.
Report of teaching, learning, student supports.
Thank you. The Teaching, Learning, and Student Support Standing Committee met on February 14, 2023. Present were myself, Vice Chair Mailman, and Member Kamara. The first item was GB 1-312.3 to request that the administration explore utilizing tutoring services for the students of the WPS. This has been an item that has been an ongoing item since the fall of 2021, so this was just a periodic update where Ms. Kelly spoke on the elementary program success. Dr. Sipple provided feedback for the secondary level and perhaps utilizing some of our own homegrown models and utilizing different pilot programs at our schools throughout the district. Dr. Sipple also spoke to continuing to study other districts who implement outside services to see if the cost justifies the usage. Administration is currently determining the return on investment for the different tutoring services. On a roll call of 3-0, the motion to hold was approved. Item number GB 2-248.3 to review district policy regarding lunch and recess time at the elementary school level and review across the district, making any adjustments necessary. We were given some charts and information regarding the recess and lunchtime that is happening at elementary schools across the district. Vice Chair Mailman spoke to the importance of kids having enough time to eat and was a proponent of achieving the 30-minute lunch period. The current policy does not require a 30-minute lunch, but does require a 30-minute recess. I made a motion to have administration to work with schools to move to a 20-minute lunch where possible within the learning time structure while maintaining a 30-minute recess, and to report back on the schools where principals do not think that this is feasible. Member Kamara made a motion to verify the accuracy of the times provided for the lunches, and Vice Chair Mailman motioned to request that the administration provide the DESE recommendations on lunch times as well as a summary of what the policies of similar districts are for lunch periods. On a roll call of 3-0, the motions were approved collectively. And I should also say that they were also, that motion to hold was approved. And then the next item is GB 2-297.1, Member Johnson, to explore the feasibility of extending lunchtime in secondary schools by at least 10 minutes. The administration presented their findings that the current lunchtime at the secondary level is sufficient and that extending the lunchtime is not feasible at this time. Vice Chair Mailman motioned to request a timetable chart for lunchtimes at the secondary levels, an overview of the logistics for each school building, and get student perspective for the March meeting of the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council. Member Kamara and myself also commented on the importance of us looking at these time charts for the larger high schools, as did Member Mailman, and we were given some feedback that schools are currently implementing lunchtimes based on locations in school, so that was an important point of note as well. And we will be holding that item until April 2023. On a roll call, the 3-0, the motions were approved collectively. GB 2-292.1 requests that the administration explore offering driver's ed utilizing local driving schools at the high school level. We actually voted to hold this item at this time to get additional information back from administration. So on a roll call of 3-0, the motion to hold was approved. And our final item was GB 2-307, to consider including conduct and effort grades to grading policies. Upon conversation, Dr. Moore stated that the review found that there was a lack of systemic grading practices across all schools, and that a task force will be put together to develop a fair and equitable grading practice guide that will create common practice across the district. Dr. Morse requested time to ensure the proper development of these practices. I motioned to hold this item for review until June of 2024 and requested that if the administration has updates that they need to bring to the Standing Committee on Teaching, Learning, and Student Support along the way, that we can add that item to the agenda. On a roll call of 3-0, the motion was approved and the motion was held. On a roll call of 3-0, the motion to adjourn was approved. Thank you.
Any questions? No? So we'll look to
Mr.
take...
Chair?
Oh, I didn't see your hand up there. Yep. Member Novick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just flag one thing that may be relevant in the conversation around recess and lunch. I believe that our policy and actually state regulation both require that our district wellness policy be reviewed periodically. And I genuinely don't know the last time that was done. And that I know does have language on both lunch time. I think it talks about sufficient time and about recess. And the district wellness committee is supposed to, by state regulation, meet 4 times a year. So that may be something to add to that conversation. Not to change the report at all, just to sort of flag that as information. Thanks.
Good. Thanks. So we'll take those collectively. Roll call.
Member Clancy?
To file. Sorry.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yes.
Member Mailman?
Yes.
Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
All right. So approval of grants. So to consider approval of prior year payments in amount of $1,463.80 to Direct Energy for fiscal year 21, and to consider approval of prior year payment in an amount of $17,572 to Springfield Public Day from fiscal year 21. Roll call.
Member Clancy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yes.
Member Mailman? Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes.
All right. So GB 374 to consider the dates of the April school committee meetings. Member Novick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We generally attempt to avoid religious holidays with our meetings, and we are, I believe, scheduled for the 6th of April, which is Holy Thursday, which is, for many of those who observe Easter, is considered a serious holy day. And I'm actually not entirely clear when our second meeting is, since it usually would fall on the 20th, and that's during April vacation. So I wanted to have that conversation just together collectively as a group. So, I mean, we can certainly consider other days of the week. There isn't any reason why we can't. Obviously, saving the mayor's time in terms of city council. But I did wonder if we could avoid those days.
Anyone?
So we just move the 6th, is the 13th open, or? No. That's school vacation week?
The 13th
No,
open?
the school vacation week starts on the 17th, so the 13th is open.
Yeah, so
Everyone good for the 13th?
Is that, I we tentatively do the 13th, and the people gonna get their schedules, so I'm not sure. Some people will not be around, I know that.
Because it's the Thursday before April vacation.
Yeah, the Thursday before April, that's the 13th, right?
The 13th also, of course, is, I'm appropriately being reminded, it would actually, for those who celebrate Orthodox Easter, would actually be Holy Thursday. So we probably don't want to bump it by the full week. Okay. We may want to look at Wednesdays if that actually works for people. I don't know if there's a conflict.
What if we tentatively approve it for the Wednesday and let people come back and what their schedules are? No? No. That's not working? Okay.
Yep. So maybe we need to send around some round robins to try to make sure that we're April is obviously a complicated month, excuse me.
But what if we just leave it into the clerk's hands and we'll arrange the schedule accordingly? Okay, that would be the motion. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All set? Okay. Next one to vote. Do we need to vote?
So we're sending to administration, I guess?
Yeah, I'm going to send it to the clerk. And,
Yep.
Send it to the clerk.
And, roll call.
Roll call.
Member Clancy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yes.
Member Mailman?
Yes.
Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes.
In GB 3-75 to schedule a public hearing for our fiscal year 24 Worcester Public Schools budget. Member Novick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As my colleagues are aware, we are legally mandated to hold a public hearing of the full school committee once the school budget has been published, but before we actually start to deliberate it, as I believe Mr. Allen will once again be gifting us with the budget on the Friday before Mother's Day. That would mean that we would need to schedule this sometime between the 15th of May and what looks like the 31st of May, really, because June 1st would then be when we would be starting to deliberate it. I'm happy to also leave this to scheduling to the clerk. I just wanted to flag it for my colleagues because it does require a full quorum of the school committee.
We'll do the same thing, leave it to the clerk to...
That's fine.
All right. Roll call.
Member Clancy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yes.
Member Mailman?
Yes.
Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes.
In GB 3-76 to consider an update to the district policy on bullying if necessary. Member Novick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As this was brought to our attention by, frankly, several parents and so forth, and I know that there's been sort of ongoing discussion about what the impact of sort of the ongoing strain from the pandemic and so forth has meant for our students, and also what that actually is then doing in terms of their relationships with one another. And I just wanted to sort of flag that out there. I don't know that it's a revision to our bullying policy that's necessary, but I did want to offer that as a way forward. If that's something that administration thinks is appropriate under the circumstances, it may be that this is something that they wish to address in a different way.
Dr. Monroe?
Through the Vice Chair. Yes, Member Novick would like to offer that we bring something back in the report of the superintendent in April. I don't know if it's going to be the first or second April meeting. Ms. Acelosa is leading a task force right now that, as we've mentioned before, there is a piece of it that looks at our bullying, or really looking at under some interventions for when bullying happens, and then other alternatives and how to kind of turn the tide, and that should be part of it. We'll let you know then if there are any implications in terms of policy.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Refer to administration then.
Member Kamara?
Thank you. And I'm also aware that I think before there was something that I passed before with this bullying, and I think Yvonne was working on it because I had a one-on-one with her, and it would be great if we can partner with that so we can get the full perspective.
Through the chair, yes, we'll bring all that back together.
Thank you. So, file, and we'll get the report back from the, we'll get it back in the report of the superintendent. All right, roll call. File.
Fine. Member Clancy?
No.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Member Novak, you're all set that we filed it because we're going to get a report back in from the report of the superintendent. This information will be in, right?
That's entirely fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, file.
Member Clancy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yeah.
Member Mailman? Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes.
All right, and that ends the meeting. So, motion to adjourn. Roll call.
Member Clancy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Member Kamara?
Yes.
Member Mailman? Yes. Member McCullough?
Yes.
Member O'Connell-Novick?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.